Okay, here we go with chapter 15. How they managed to survive this leap into the unknown, Martine later had no idea. One minute they were in a creepy clearing, and the next Jimmy had launched himself directly at the cliff face, and was being sucked at by gravity and strangled and mauled and scratched by hairy vines and vicious thorny branches. At last they came to a trembling halt. They were in complete darkness, and it was some time before Martine's eyes adjusted to the light and she was able to take the fact that she was still on the giraffe's back, and still in one piece. It was even longer before she was able to figure out a way to slide safely to the ground. Back on solid earth, she felt small, inconsequential again, but also elated. For the time being, at least, she and Jemmy had outwitted the poachers. She took her grandmother's flashlight from the pocket of her windbreaker and prepared to expect the unexpected. She had willingly climbed onto the back of the wild giraffe, even though there were probably very good reasons why no one else in history had attempted to ride one, and had been whisked away to the deeply unpleasant place at the even more unpleasant tree. Then, just as she thought things couldn't possibly get any more surreal, the white giraffe had hurled himself at a mountain. They could be anywhere. See, she switched on her flashlight. Relief flooded through her. Nothing fantastical had occurred, at least nothing involving magic. And Jimmy hadn't actually jumped through bare rock. He'd simply leaped onto the veil of creepers and into the crevice that lay behind it. Because the crevice ran at an angle almost parallel to the cliff itself and was disguised by foliage and great twisted bulk of the tree, it was invisible from the outside. Martine marveled that even the animals had never found it. Not that many of them, if the silence was anything to go by. Drawing a wide arc with her flashlight beam, she discovered that she was in an exquisite little valley of perhaps an acre, surrounded by three sides by high sloping walls of sheer granite, and on the fourth a massive chestnut boulders stacked 5 deep. The effect was being on one side of an uneven pyramid. The mountainside wall leaned at such an angle that it was overhung by boulders like a ledge, creating a roof over the valley. Seen from below, it was obvious that even if someone were to climb the mountains and glance down, they still wouldn't notice the valley. It was completely hidden. That wasn't the amazing part, though. Judging by the rectangle of blue-black sky she could see, a fluke of nature had ensured that there was enough space between the ledge and the boulders to allow sunlight into the valley for at least a little part of each day. That explained the presence of several acacia trees, a favorite food for the giraffe, and I'll put a link it too. The lush carpet of giraffe and the fragrant white orchids springing from the valley's floor. There was also a pool of water in a hollowed rock, fed by a clear stream. Martine knew she was standing in the white giraffe's secret sanctuary. Jimmy had everything he needed to survive here, everything, that is, except love and company. No wonder he was shy, and no wonder he was so lonely. She ran a soothing hand over Jimmy and was marveled once again that he stood still under her touch. If he would let her, she planned to give him all the love and company he could possibly want. He never needed to be lonely again. In the meantime, a million of questions ran through her mind. Who first discovered this secret valley? Had any other human being ever been here? Did anyone apart from the animals know it existed? She set out to explore the valley perimeter, combing the walls with her flashlight. That's when she saw it, the black triangle between two rocks. It looked like some sort of tunnel. Immediately, she felt an overwhelming urge to investigate. She was well aware that there were probably smarter things she could do in her present situation than go poking around in black holes, but try as she might, she couldn't think of any. She checked on the white giraffe. He was over by the stream, drinking deeply, his front legs spread wide, his silvery nose wrinkled against the bubbles. Martine debated what to do. What if she used up all her luck for one evening? But there was something almost magnetic about the space. She felt as if there was something pulling her toward it, calling her even. She had the oddest sense that going into the tunnel was what she was meant to do. That's what she'd end up doing, whether she decided to or not. Retying her bootlaces purposely, Martine walked on uncertain legs toward the black hole. Her heart was in her mouth. Well, it was a tunnel, one that smelled strongly of wet rock and animals that dwell in dark places. Spiders, baboons, and the like. Leopards enjoy these places as well, but Martine consoled herself with the thought that Jimmy would hardly have lived as long as he had if a carnivore resided so close by. Want to learn some more leopard facts? I'll include a link. After one attempt to talk herself into staying in the lovely valley, she stepped inside. The tunnel was not much taller than she was, and a small adult would have had to crouch, but gradually it widened and became less claustrophobic. After a while, it turned back on itself. She was beneath the mountain now. From there, the ground rose sharply in a series of steep steps, slick with froggy algae. Martine put the flashlight between her teeth, and scrambled up in an undignified fashion. She made a mental note to smuggle her giraffe fur, grass, and slime-covered jeans into the washing machine before her grandmother noticed them. The vegetable garden excuse was not going to work a second time. She was halfway up the last step when a hideous screech echoed from the chamber above her. Martine nearly flew over backward. Her light flashed around madly as she grabbed a ledge to save herself. Within seconds, the air was filled with a blizzard of flapping wings and high-pitched squeals. She had unleashed a colony of bats. In England, Martine had known girls who went around saying that if they had a phobia about bats, even though they lived in suburbia and had never encountered them outside of Dracula films. She herself had never much cared for the idea of them, but since her arrival in Africa, she'd come to realize that they were actually quite cute. Far from being blood-sucking vampires, they were just flying mice that enjoyed fruit. Until, that is, they got caught in your hair. Ugh, sputtered Martine as she tried to disentangle their scratchy feet and clammy wings without being bitten. Ugh. When the black windwhirl subsided, she picked up her flashlight, dusted herself off, and saw that she was in a cave, one the height and the size of a small church. But what struck her as strange was that the feeling of the cave was different from that of the tunnel, which was simply damp and cold. The cave had a distinct atmosphere. Martine took a lungful of its dense, heavy air and was immediately swamped with the same lightheaded, time-traveled sensation that she felt somewhere in the cathedrals and historical buildings that her parents had taken her to in London, England. Leeds Castle or the Tower of London. There, too, she had a real sense of generations who occupied them before. It was almost as if certain people in certain eras made their mark on a place so thoroughly that their spirits never left. But why would she feel that here? Moving cautiously so not to alarm the bats, Martine shined her flashlight around the cave. What she saw next made her cry out in wonder. Every wall and every walk was covered in paintings. Some of them were nothing more than crude charcoal line drawings faded from the years. Some were stick figures, and some were so rich in texture and hue that they seemed to leap from the walls like naked flames. But every one of them lived and breathed. They spoke to her from across the ages as clearly as if their creators were standing in front of her, telling her of battles lost and won, feasts and famines, times of pestilence and times of plenty. Martine sank down onto a rock. Half of her felt like a child at Christmas. The other half felt dizzy. What was happening? What was this all about? Jemmy, the canoe, and now the cave pictures? What did it all mean? Oh, if she'd only been able to have a proper conversation with Grace on that first day in Africa. Martine was sure that Grace held the key to at least part of the mystery. She had, after all, known about the gift. So much was happening so fast. Martine tried to remember her life with her mom and dad. Already bits of it were fading. One thing she did recall was being petrified of the dark and spending sleepless nights convinced that something monstrous lurked under her bed. Several times she'd even crept into her parents' room. Yet here she was, alone in a cave in the dead of night, and she felt completely unafraid. Confused, yet but not afraid. Nor did she feel alone. It was as though her mom and dad were watching her, as though they knew about her and Jemmy. She smiled to herself in the dark. She knew that she owed much of her newfound confidence to the White Giraffe. Lovingly, Jemmy had given her the reason to smile when he was sure that she'd never smile again, and being brave for Jemmy as she had to tonight had made her reach deep inside for some strong, steady part of herself that she hadn't known existed until then. In return, the White Giraffe had overcome his fear of humans to save her twice and allow her to ride him. If he hadn't trusted her, he wouldn't have brought her here. She vowed that as long as she lived, she would never tell anyone about the secret valley. If the paintings were ever found, Jemmy's sanctuary would be flooded with reporters, scientists, and tourists. The ancient spirits would be chased away. The world would come trampling in. Martine stared at the paintings. One of her mom's books had contained pictures just like these. They had been painted by the Sand People, and the Bushmen were known for centuries before why the white man ever came in, using iron ore, china clay, and oxgall. She wondered if the pictures too had been painted by the Bushmen, or if some other tribes had done them, perhaps Tenday's tribe, the Zulus. She got up off the rock and went over for a closer look. Her head was still spinning, and she still had millions of questions, but mostly she felt lucky to be able to witness this. Holding a flashlight above her head, she walked around the cave. The red, gold, and black images unfolded before her like scenes from an old sepia-tone movie. Martine was entranced. Despite their simplicity, they conveyed lives of great beauty and sorrow. There were fantastic scenes of animal migration, tribal dances, and men confronting rhinos and elephants armed only with bows and arrows. She was halfway around when she noticed paintings of a giraffe. It was one of a series, most of which featured herds of giraffes surrounded by men with spears. In each new picture, the herds became smaller and smaller, and more bloody giraffes lay on the ground. Soon there were just two left. Then they too were on the ground, and man lay on the ground with them. But what was it she saw in the next painting that Martine's head really started whirling? It showed a white giraffe suckling from an elephant. At first she was sure that the coloring of the giraffe was merely a tick of light, but when she compared it to the previous images, it was definitely paler. She traced the giraffe with her fingertips. The rock was cold to the touch, but somehow it too had some kind of energy. She had to force herself to look at the final picture, and when she did, it was emotional. The emotion was overwhelming. The hue of the image was different, almost as if it had been created with a metallic paint. In it, the child was riding a white giraffe. To the left of them was a fire, and to the right of them was a line of animals of different species. The child who can ride a white giraffe will have the power over all the animals, Tenday had told her when she first arrived. And although some dreamy part of her had entertained fantasies about riding Jemmy, she never really thought about what it meant because she never believed it for a second that it might come true. Why would she manage to be able to ride a giraffe? Nobody else in the world ever had. The child who can ride a white giraffe will have power over all the animals. For the second time that evening, Martine's knees gave way and she had to sit down under a rock. Grace had been right. The forefathers had known she was coming.